coral. Animals that don't move or don't move much, yet reef junkies can't get enough of it. Blue, green, orange, red, purple, or some combination thereof makes your tank look great and gives you satisfaction that even the internet can't provide. With chop shops popping up in garages across the country, there's one place that isn't interested in the chop and ship routine: Worldwide Corals. Located in Orlando, Florida, where this guy lives, Worldwide Corals prides themselves on great corals with a proven track record. They've been at it for 10 years, so to see what 10 years of working on great coral looks like, I dropped in for a visit. Josh, this looks like a tank with a couple little 1-inch frags in it.
Yeah, there's a few 1-inch frags in there. That's our 500-gallon display here in our front display room, powered by Ecotech lights, Vortec pumps.
500 gallons of water volume in this thing. What kind of dimensions am I looking at?
It's 10 feet long, it's 34 inches from front to back, and it's 27 inches tall.
I'm noticing on this tank, there's no sand. Why did you guys go bare bottom?
It helps control the nutrients a lot. When we do a water change, some of the nitrate and the phosphate goes out the door with it, as opposed to getting trapped in the substrate.
Well, let's jump in here and have a close look, because
Sure.
There's definitely some eye-catching stuff in here. The front 500 display is a visual playground with eye candy everywhere. I wanted to frag everything I saw. Fragging everything is an easy approach. Being picky, that's the hard part. So this tank has big colonies in here. I see some 1-inch frags. You got acros, you got a bounce mushroom, mongees. How do you all decide what comes in and what goes out of this tank?
Kind of depends on what shades what and what color looks good next to another color. A lot of times they get too big, they have to come out. Sometimes we'll put a frag back of the same piece, or we'll replace it with something new and exciting.
Because last time I was here, which was probably 3 years ago, this was more of a chalice tank. Now it seems to be going back to more of an acro tank.
Yeah, it used to be predominantly chalices. Acropora seems to be the new excitement, I guess you would say.
So with this many corals touching one another, Josh, you clearly have a battle for turf going on. Does that ever get old to you guys?
Not at all. It's a good problem to have.
It's like high taxes, right? It means you're making a bunch of money.
Yep, exactly. We love our corals. I mean, that's kind of the root of what we are. You know, if the coral's happy and it looks good, it makes you excited. It's a very visual hobby.
The front 500-gallon display does its job of capturing customers' attention right as they walk into the store. And you don't have to look too long to notice something big jumping right out at you. Josh, this is one of the biggest tabling acros I've seen in a tank, certainly this size. Was this a 1-inch frag when you started it?
It sure was.
How much time are we looking at from 1-inch frag to this?
This tank is set up 5 years ago, so it's a little bit less than that.
5 years on this guy. Have you fragged off this thing? Has it fallen down?
Many times.
And it's still, I'm gonna guess, at least 20 inches across.
I think we measured it the other day, it was 21.
21 by 20?
21 by 20.
Gee, so this thing's sucking down the calcium, the alkalinity. How often do you frag off this coral?
As much as we need to. You know, we supply our farm with frags.
Now you said farm, so that implies that you guys are growing corals here?
Yes, we aquaculture as much as we possibly can.
Aquaculturing as much as they possibly can? That's an understatement. All these tanks are packed full of aquacultured frags for sale. Then Josh took me to where most people never get to go, back here to the farm. But first, I got distracted by this monster.
So what you're looking at here is our 900-gallon display. 12 feet long, 48 inches from front to back, and 30 inches tall.
Wow.
Powered by 12 Ecotech Gen 4s, Pros of course, with supplemental T5s.
I mean, you got all different types of coral, and you got this, looks like some kind of conglomeration of tang in here too.
Oh, white chocolate? He's our new mascot.
That's quite the collector's item.
He's actually a really cool fish. His personality is very laid back.
Now, this tank looks pretty well stuffed. How often are you fragging out of this thing?
We try to cut as much as possible to keep the corals away from one another, of course.
There's that coral growing together problem. I'm seeing a trend here today.
It's a good problem to have, again, but I mean, it ensures the health of the coral, you know. They don't exactly do well touching up against each other. On the far side over here, we've got a really cool blue deep water. We called it Blue Monster. How original. And there's some corals that you can't even see in here. I mean, underneath, I think below this rock, we have a coral colony that's probably 12 inches across. But from where you and I are standing, you can't even see it.
Can we get behind there and look?
Yeah, we have a platform on the back. We can walk all the way across.
Let's go see it. This tank looks pretty much grown out. How long has it had corals in it?
Just about a year and a half, so it'll
Year
be
and a
the end of April last year.
But you guys put in big colonies, right?
No, everything was a frag.
Like 2-inch, 4-inch frag, 1-inch frag? What are we talking about here?
Less than 2 inches.
Less than 2 inches. In a year and a half-ish, you're looking at this kind of growth.
Yep. For the most part, we put in about 2 days, 500 pieces.
So what was it like placing 500 coral frags? That was your job for 2 days.
Well, you figure out a way to mix epoxy with 2 hands.
You're staying in this tank. I think people are just shuttling you coral.
Pretty much. Vic and I spent a lot of time in here that day.
And your back
Those
was
last
sore.
couple days. Yeah.
Tired, bent over,
Wet,
cold.
cold.
It's a tough life, right?
Yeah.
I could have stared at this tank all day, but I remembered I was back here to look at the farm.
Mark, this is our farm. This is where we kind of make all the magic happen. We have 4 650-gallon raceways here. 1, 2, and 300 are tied together. And then the very last one is 400.
Now, what's the mentality of having that one separate?
It's kind of like a giant frag tank for a tank.
Meaning,
Meaning when we cut stuff, it can go directly into there without having to worry about a quarantine or an acclimation process.
is that frags just from the 900
That's correct.
that we just looked at? That whole frag tank there is
It's
just for
something
frags,
from that tank. Yep,
and it's stuffed full of frags.
correct.
Okay? Just getting my mind around that many frags out of that tank, and that tank still looks completely full. So frags from the 900 go into that single raceway. The rest of these are grow out.
It's kind of a mix. After they make it out of a receiving and a quarantine process, then they go into one system that doesn't have a like coral. So, for example, if we have an acropora in that system, we do not bring in new acropora to that system until it's gone quote unquote fallow.
Okay.
And then we have other systems like these here behind me and in front of me. We call this system 3, which is right around 1,200 gallons. And we do the same thing. It gives us the ability to remove corals from a system in the event of an issue and move them to another to sterilize it, so to speak.
So say that somehow a Montipora eating nudibranch got through, you could just take out all the Monties out of this system, remove them, and starve out that
That's
pest.
correct. And I mean, the way we have to look at it is no matter how rigorous our quarantine process is, mistakes are made. We're humans. So what we did is we gave us the ability to recover from a mistake instead of being catastrophic failure.
So talk to me about you guys' quarantine procedure. What does that look like?
It's basically a receiving tank where everything comes into. We get an idea of what we're going to do with it from that point on. Are we going to sell it? Are we going to keep it? Are we going to keep it and sell it? And then it'll go into an isolation tank with corals of its type. Montipora with Montipora, for example. It'll sit there, and after being 30 days of clean, we'll introduce it to a system that has no Montipora.
Okay.
So even through that process, you're still quarantining. It's just a different system. It's still the same methodology, but behind dipping and actually observing, which is kind of the biggest part of it all.
Now, does that mean you have that many pests that you need to deal with, or you're just that vigilant against pests?
Well, the latter of the two, I suppose. But I mean, there's a lot of pests out there some that we know about, some we don't know about. But we have a lot of coral. So regardless of however you want to look at it, it needs attention. And that's why we advise everybody, always dip your stuff, because no matter what you do, you're gonna miss something.
So you all get in a bunch of Montipora, it's gonna get fragged out, and then you're gonna put it in this system and watch it for how long before you sell it?
Well, after it goes through receiving and isolation, then it'll go into quarantine for 30 days.
So how long is isolation?
Isolation could be as long as 60 to 90 days.
60 to 90 days. So you all get a coral and you don't get to sell it for 60 to 90 days, potentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
We missed the boat on a lot of sales. People put up stuff that's hot and new and exciting, and we won't bring it out available to the public until later on. But we're also taking the hit of making sure that the coral is happy and healthy before you get it. As a hobbyist, you're gonna find that you get busy, you have children, we have lives other than just our aquarium, so we're not exactly always diligent about our husbandry techniques. So a little swing in alkalinity, a little temperature variance, it'll happen. In the wild, that doesn't happen. You know, once it's encrusted and growing here, there's a much higher chance that these corals are more adapted to aquarium life as opposed to taking a wild caught colony with parasites, or without for that matter, and putting it into your aquarium and telling it stay put and do your best.
And see what you get, because as a hobbyist, you're like, I don't know if it's going to survive, and if it's wild caught, it's a pretty good chance, I tell my clients, it's going to change colors.
Yeah, for sure.
And it might turn to brown.
Absolutely. And again, that's the chance that we take. Not every coral we buy is beautiful. Not every coral we sell is beautiful. It may be to one person or the other, but at the same time, it is what it is. And when you get it, you would expect that to be the case.
You guys have taken on the risk not only with pest control, because you're quarantining it, but also you've put the coral through captive bred life to see if it's going to change colors, and if it does, here's what it's going to change colors into, so you know what you're buying. You can take that risk out of the equation.
That's correct. I mean, realistically, the way we look at it is, if it does well for us, it should do well for you.
Now, does that include shipping?
Yeah, we've recently looked at our mortality rate when it comes to shipping, and we're below 0.5%.
So Josh, let's put this in perspective then. If you ship out 100 corals, you're going to expect an issue with maybe one of them.
Yeah, maybe one of them. Most of the time it ends up being poor tank placement, or the courier showed up a little bit late in cold weather. But realistically, we have a really, really good success rate with captive grown corals.
I have never heard of one that low. And certainly as a buyer, it gives me confidence of buying something that is not only likely pest-free, know how it's going to perform in captivity, and I have a good idea of how it's going to perform in my tank from a longevity standpoint. Worldwide Corals has this farm in the back of their shop. And here's something most people don't know. They also have a remote farm that they're just getting started. As of this video, few people have even seen the remote farm. But Worldwide Corals let me see it and bring my cameras. Here's your sneak peek.
All right, so here's the first one of our 16 raceways. This is where things are coming out of quarantine.
At the other facility.
No, they're coming out of quarantine in that facility into this quarantine.
So wait. They got quarantined over there, then they come in here and get on a separate quarantine.
That's correct. The corals that are in this quarantine here are only grown in our display tanks or one of our already quarantined farm tanks.
And you're quarantining them again?
Yeah, because there are things, like we talked about before, we are human, we do make mistakes. Things like Asterina stars and Aptasia, they do make their way through. And unfortunately, there's a lot of different weird copepods and things like that that most hobbyists aren't aware of that do eat coral.
So it's pretty dang clean before it gets here, if not clean, and then you clean it up again.
Yeah, we do our best.
So it gets quarantined again and then put in here for grow out.
That's correct.
And this looks, you know, like it's coming along, but this was a load of coral you said from the other day, but you could hardly tell.
Yeah, I think we brought over 250 pieces and it doesn't even look like we put a dent in it.
Yeah, I mean, you got plenty of room to grow. And how many of these? 10
16?
Of them? 16 of them. How many frags can you hold in this place if you filled it up?
If we fit 3,000 pieces of coral in this one tank, you know.
3,000?
Yeah, I'm sure it's possible.
Like frag plugs in one of these.
Sure.
And you have 16 of them.
Sure.
That's a lot of frags. Of pulsing xenia.
And star polyps.
And star polyps. And an occasional zoa or acropora.
Of course.
Really cool to hear how you guys are being so diligent about managing your corals, watching out their husbandry, quarantining them. In the end, it trickles down to great corals that are going to do well in our tanks.
It's great. We've got a whole team of people who really love what we do. So it kind of translates into what we do.
Absolutely. And most places are chop shops. They bring in a piece, chop it up, and immediately going to get it out the door. And coral could be here for its whole life. And you got the infrastructure and the staff to support it.
It's excellent, man. It really is.